Afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to this online press conference on Africa's first EcoMobility World Festival happening in October 2015 in Johannesburg, South Africa. You've surely heard of car-free days. Many cities have done that around the world, but only 2 cities have taken the extra mile and extended the day into a month-long unique experience, enabling citizens to preview a future where citizens can move around freely in an eco-mobile, eco-friendly, safe and healthy way. This concept is called the EcoMobility World Festival. We are joined now by 2 esteemed speakers, Mayor Mpho, Mayor of Johannesburg, South Africa, and Mr. Gino van Begin, the Secretary General of ICLEI. ICLEI is the world's leading network of over 1,000 cities working on sustainable development. And the city of Johannesburg, as you all know, is a world-class megacity and the financial capital of South Africa. These are the 2 organizers of the event. Both speakers will talk about their ideas and inspiration for these EcoMobility World Festivals, the activities that will happen locally, and how this could spur the momentum for a shift to sustainable urban transport globally in the future. After their brief presentations, you will have the chance to ask questions. So I will now pass on the mic to Mr. Gino van Begin, who will tell us how this festival came about, why it matters, and what we expect out of it.
Good afternoon, Mayor Mpho. Good afternoon, members of the press, and thank you very much for joining us here at this online press conference on the EcoMobility World Festival, which will take place in Johannesburg. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the press, why are we organizing this festival? As you know, our planet is really depending on how our cities develop and how they evolve. Now, transportation and urban mobility is a very important part of that. We know that very soon another 3.5 billion people will live in cities, all in need of work, of food, of housing, and of transportation. Now, we have come to see that over the years, our dependency on the private car use has extremely increased, and in particularly has led to a number of magnificent problems, in particular in urban areas. For example, road transport today accounts for 40% of all CO2 emissions and for 70% of all other pollutants. The greenhouse gas emissions from the transport sector are projected to increase by 140% until 2050. The symptoms of our dependency on the private car is visible in the form of increasing congestions, deterioration of our air quality and thus human health, and a loss of public spaces. But in addition, the economical loss due to these symptoms is considerable. For example, traffic congestion is a major sunk cost for economies. In Shanghai, China's largest or second largest city by population, loses some 10% of its annual GDP due to traffic congestion. In Europe, European cities lose 100 billion euros annually, or 1% of the EU's GDP, due to congestion. In Asia, the Asian Development Bank estimates that the annual congestion cost is around 2 to 5% of global GDP. Indeed, Asian cities also suffer from the highest air pollution levels in the world, and 80% of that is attributed to urban transportation. So within that context, what is the concept of eco-mobility and of this festival? We need indeed solutions. We need permanent solutions and innovation. As one of our overall aims, ICLEI supports cities worldwide in their planning and implementing of socially inclusive, environmentally sustainable, and economically feasible urban mobility. We do this through what we call our eco-mobility agenda. As it has been said, it is common for a number of cities in the world to have a car-free day or a car-free weekend. What we try to do with the festival is to bring it to another level, and during an entire month a neighborhood in a city will be closed for the use of private cars. The EcoMobility World Festival is a concept that we have initiated 3 years ago. Our aim with this festival is to show via exemplary cities such as Johannesburg that cities can say no to the increasing congestion that we are experiencing in our cities. The conduction of an EcoMobility World Festival requires actually only one thing: a determined political leader, a determined mayor who says, enough of private cars, let's give the streets back to our people. The first festival was held in Suwon, a city nearby Seoul in South Korea. The results there were astonishing. The city achieved a 98% voluntary abstinence from the private car use by the residents of that neighborhood. Overnight, the car-filled neighborhood turned into a people's friendly neighborhood. The second festival will be held now in October in Johannesburg. A part of the Sandton business district will be closed for regular traffic for the entire duration of the festival. The residents, workers, and the business community and visitors will, however, have full access to the entire area and to alternative means of transportation and mobility, in particularly expanded public transportation and specific arrangements to encourage cycling and pedestrian activities. This festival will set the example for solutions in the future and in many other cities. The festival will be an opportunity, a unique opportunity, for local leaders, for international leaders, for experts and citizens to share the solutions and discuss also the problems around pollution caused by air transportation, by transportation, greenhouse gas emissions and traffic congestion. By hosting this festival, the city of Johannesburg expands its commitment to true sustainable urban solutions. Under the guidance of Mayor Park Stau, who is a core member of our network and a visionary leader, Johannesburg will set the example for other large cities in the developing and developed world to increase the level of their ambitions and to realize a vision of a sustainable and livable urban area for all. The EcoMobility World Festival is a testimony to a strong leadership and willingness to reclaim the city for Johannesburg's people. We have a city, Johannesburg, a district, Sandton, which is one of the richest in Africa. At the same time, it does face considerable challenges, including the increasing traffic congestion and pollution. The festival will show that it is possible for Johannesburg to lead not only economically and financially, but also in terms of sustainable urban mobility. The eco-mobility dialogues which will take place during the festival shall provide an opportunity for local leaders, international leaders, experts in the field and citizens to meet and share their success stories, case studies and solutions. A variety of technical papers will be elaborated and shall provide a basis for discussion and sum up some of the latest developments in the fields of transportation, transport and climate change, urban freight, urban health and road safety, soot-free buses and sustainable transport. The festival will end and conclude with a declaration on low-carbon urban transport. It will be signed by representatives of cities from around the world international organizations, development agencies, research and academic institutions, as well as experts in urban transportation and climate change. This declaration will express the support that Johannesburg and all these partners are committing to low-carbon transportation options. And we will take it to the United Nations Climate Summit in Paris at the COP21 later this year in December. The potential contribution of sustainable transportation choices to greenhouse gas emissions reduction is huge. Making cities livable and efficient is one of our most crucial challenges in the near future. Through the EcoMobility World Festival, we will show that the face of urban mobility can change when there is strong leadership in cities, and we as ICLEI are very much behind such strong city leadership to support this change and accompany it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gino van Begin. Under the leadership of its bold and visionary mayor, Mayor Park Stouw, the city of Johannesburg has taken up the challenge of prioritizing public transport, walking and cycling over public vehicles through this EcoMobility World Festival. By doing so, it joins the rank of forward-looking cities combining economic and social development with the creation of a people-friendly urban environment. Mayor Park Stouw, tell us about your vision of this festival for the city of Johannesburg and for its citizens.
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon. Good afternoon to Gino, members of the media that have logged on to this online press conference. I thought I should compliment the words that have been presented by Gino with a few comments about why, in fact, as the city of Johannesburg, we thought it would be important to host the EcoMobility Festival in the first instance, but also secondly, why we thought Sandton would be the most appropriate location. And I'll just make 3 quick points in this regard. We as the city have undertaken a detailed study together with the private sector, the Business Improvement District in Sandton, and surrounding areas around the impact of congestion and traffic in and around Sandton. It has become evident that unless we're able to intervene decisively, that the most critical business area in the city of Johannesburg and indeed on the African continent would face significant challenges with regards to congestion. Currently, the area is facing levels of congestion that in our opinion is unacceptable, but we certainly believe that we would need to intervene decisively unless in fact Sandton turns into a parking lot as has been projected by our own studies in the city of Johannesburg. So we thought that there would be an economic benefit in the first instance in intervening with regards to mobility in the area of Sandton. And there are 2 areas of interventions. The first relates to extensive investment in infrastructure to support mobility in the area of Sandton, the expansion, of course, on the supply side of the highway network, the building of a dedicated bus rapid transit system that would now be going into Sandton, building dedicated walking and cycling lanes across the M1 highway, but also a dedicated bus lane that in fact would be built across the M1 highway so that you're able to gain access through both walking, cycling and alternative public transport in the area of Sandton, thus creating ease of access into Sandton and in fact reducing the burden of people having to spend time in traffic when there are alternatives with regards to public transport. But we are quite cognizant of the reality that you cannot resolve the problem from a supply side only. That in fact you would need to intervene on a demand side, meaning that literally, as the engineers would say, we can't build ourselves out of the problem. Reality is that we have to introduce alternatives and that we would need to introduce eco-mobile alternatives to enable ease of movement into Sandton and to reduce the levels of traffic congestion. So the first argument is really from an economic point of view, that there's economic value in reducing congestion through both supply and demand side interventions that we're currently introducing in Sandton. And we are building cycling lanes, walking lanes, dedicated bus lanes to be able to deal with it. The second is, of course, an environmental concern. CO2 emissions are at an extremely high level per capita. Johannesburg is the highest emitter on the African continent of CO2 emissions, and we've made a commitment with our international partners and governments throughout the world to ensure that we're able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And our commitment as the city of Johannesburg has been demonstrated through a number of initiatives ranging from alternative energy to alternative means of mobility. In fact, we recently introduced dual fuel buses that are propelled through compressed natural gas, and this runs concurrently with diesel, but progressively we're moving into gas as a means of propelling our buses. And the idea really is that we would need to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that are emitted in our city so that we contribute towards the global goals that not only have we set ourselves as a city, but indeed the world would be meeting in Paris about at the end of this year, with the intention to set ourselves further targets of creating a better climate and a better environment for current and future generations. And we think that through introducing eco-mobile solutions, in fact, we would give people the appropriate alternatives. And those alternatives would range from walking, cycling, and other lesser energy intensive alternatives that they would have. And this would include, of course, the dedicated bus lanes that we would have in the area of Sandton. And for us, we think that that's an opportunity to intervene on the environment side. But a third argument for us that's very important is something that would be very topical in the climate change negotiations in Paris at the end of this year. If you do an assessment of how, as African cities and countries we've benefited from climate change regime, the reality is that the disproportionately low amount of resources have been deployed in African cities and on the African continent to enable us to intervene with regards to climate change mitigation and adaptation. And we think that this EcoMobility Festival enables us not only to represent Johannesburg, but to represent all our peer cities on the African continent in presenting a commitment by our cities to intervene through both mitigation and adaptation, and thus the need for the regimes to include mechanisms that would finance the city ambitions and objectives that we would have set for ourselves. And certainly this is an opportunity for us to say that Africa's leading cosmopolitan city and commercial hub is raising its hand, not only on its own behalf, but on behalf of all the other cities, to say we are determined and commitment to do our part with regards to climate change. We indeed believe that the world has an obligation to deploy proportionate to our own challenges, the resources that have been deployed to our counterpart cities in the western parts of the world. My last comment would be to say that one of the things that we've observed with great excitement in the city of Johannesburg is the commitment by business to intervene with regards to climate change. We are witnessing the development and deployment of green building technologies, and many of our buildings that are coming up in our city are now meeting not only national but international green building standards and are certified as green buildings. This is demonstrating a commitment by business to intervene, and this intervention is through the buildings that they build, but we are convinced that the next step is about intervening on the mobility side. In fact, mobility contributes more to greenhouse gas emissions, and the commitment that we've shown as a country through buildings, we believe, can be matched through looking at alternative mobility solutions as we join the rest of the world in addressing the challenges of not only current generations but future generations. Thank you very much.
You want to have it back?
Thank you, Mayor Parkstow. Now is the chance for all of you journalists who are joining us and the members of the press to ask questions.
I think you can read the question on the noteboard, please.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I can see the question on the notebook from Africa News Analysis in Germany. Just to say, I mean, there are 2 points that we would want to make with regards to the use of cycling as a mode of transport. In particular, poorer communities, for commuting purposes, we have a high number of people that use cycling as a mode of transport. But in middle to higher income communities, you are using it for recreational and exercise purposes. In fact, one of the things we've observed is the number of people that have to put their bicycles on their cars, simply to go into safe spaces to be able to cycle. And through introducing the dedicated cycle lanes, we believe that we can move people from cycling away from the public roads into the public roads. So we think that this intervention of rolling out dedicated cycling lanes would get more and more people from cycling in the off-peak periods, this is very early in the mornings, to getting them into cycling for purposes of complementing both commuting and cycling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Should I comment first, or will Gino comment first?
Please, Mayor Parkstyle.
Well, thank you very much, Gino. Well, firstly, I think that for us as the city of Johannesburg, both by being members of ICLEI, in fact, our former mayor was president of ICLEI in the past, Mayor Masondo, but also as an active member of the C40 Cities for Climate Change, we've demonstrated and shown a commitment to addressing greenhouse gas emissions and understand our responsibility as the leading commercial city on the African continent. And for us, we believe that it is a duty that we have to provide the leadership to our peers, not only in South Africa, but in Africa. And thus, we think that Johannesburg would continue playing a leading role in ensuring that we're able to intervene. We are convinced that, in fact, through successfully hosting the EcoMobility Conference, we would ensure that we open up opportunities for new economic platforms for energy, for cycling and other modes of transportation. But certainly that would continue positioning Johannesburg as a city that's committed to its global obligations to address not just poverty, unemployment, inequality, but also indeed to address the challenges that we confront with regards to climate change.
I would maybe just like to add to what Mayor Parkstyle just said, is that the opportunities of this EcoMobility Festival and linking it in particular to the geographical area of Johannesburg is worldwide being noticed. And I think having such a innovative experiment done on African ground and soil as an example for many other cities, be it in Northern Europe, Western Europe, the United States, Latin America, as indeed Asian cities, is an extremely good example. It demonstrates the political willingness and leadership at the one hand, the willingness and the courage to confront problems, because as it was said before, indeed switching from private car to, for example, cycling or walking has a number of additional elements that we need to tackle, including safety, for example. So finding solutions within, in this case, a South African, a Johannesburg context and concept is very useful for other cities to learn from and to potentially implement in the same way. So from an ICLEI perspective, we are very, very pleased to see that 2 years ago we could do a similar festival for the very first time in Asia, in South Korea, that now we can move to Africa, to Sandton, South Africa, Johannesburg, and that hopefully we will be able to go to other regions and geographically spread the innovation and the concept of switching from private cars to more eco-mobile friendly transportation means. And so we do hope that if this is going to be a success as a festival, that it will have also set the seed for a wider spread of good urban mobility transportation concepts and strategies within the city of Johannesburg, but more importantly even, that it can set good examples to the rest of the world and many of the other cities that are dealing with exactly the same kind of problematics as Johannesburg is tackling right now.
Well, thank you very much for the question. The first point of emphasis I should make is that for the purpose of the EcoMobility Festival, the city is currently procuring additional passes that we're rolling out from a Metro Pass point of view, and these passes would be, in the first instance, dedicated to Sandton, so that you do have alternative public transport means during the EcoMobility Festival period. But the second point I should make is that we've made a long-term commitment to Sandton in particular as the key commercial district in our city. We're currently investing in dedicated lanes for bus rapid transit systems. As I said, we'll be having a dedicated lane that moves from the eastern sides of the city into Sandton, so it would go over the highway. That would enable people from next year to have access to a BRT system that would support the area of Sandton, so people would be able to move with greater ease and access into that area. We're also currently building a bridge for walking and cycling purposes into Sandton, also from the eastern parts of the city into Sandton. So that's a commitment of ensuring that we create Sandton into an accessible part of our city from different modes of transportation. This would include bus rapid transit systems, minibus taxis for those who use minibus taxis. Indeed, we need to. And I should say we're quite excited that the minibus taxi industry has committed themselves to contribute to the solutions as opposed to being seen as a problem from time to time. And they've keenly signed up to participate in the EcoMobility Festival, But we're also investing in bus or rather cycling and walking lanes so that we create greater ease for people that are looking for other alternatives into Sandton. The last point I should make is that we think that there is great excitement amongst the people, because not only are we addressing the public transport solutions, we also understand that there would still be a number of people that would need for different purposes to use private cars, and both during and after the EcoMobility Festival, there is an investment into uninterrupted power supply for our traffic lighting systems into Sandton, so that we continue contributing towards decreasing the congestion, because as I indicated from the onset, for us they are both environmental benefits to hosting the EcoMobility Festival, but there are also indeed economic benefits through reducing the amount of congestion in Sandton.
Next question, please. I'm afraid we have no more questions for now. Maybe you'd like to. Oh, we just received a question. Hold on a second, please.
Thank you very much for the question from Radio France International. Just to say that what we've said is that, particularly because the EcoMobility Festival in Johannesburg is taking place at our commercial district, that we would need to acknowledge the need for some access of private transport for logistics access, but also different users of the area. So we've designed it in a unique way, responding to the reality that it would be in a commercial district. The first is about building a loop, a public transport loop around Sandton, so there would be dedicated routes that get people into Sandton. We'd also be having counterflow lanes from different parts of the city, so that not only do people have to contend with alternative solutions when they are in Sandton, but there would be park and ride facilities on a counterflow lane from areas that are outside the Sandton CBD. For those who are in Johannesburg, who would know Brightwater House Commons and Monte Casino as places where people would have park and ride facilities with dedicated counterflow lanes that would create ease of movement on a public transport system into the area of Sandton. So from an infrastructure support point of view, we'd be having pop-up bus stops and those sort of facilities that we're creating, because our bus rapid transit system would only be in place fully by next year. So currently what we have to do is to create the alternatives and to build the momentum towards those facilities that we're building to support the area of Sandton. So it wouldn't be a complete closure, but there would be routes that have high levels of restrictions, and there would be dedicated lanes. So more and more people would be encouraged, or rather incentivized, to use alternative transportation means, as certain routes would be dedicated to walking, cycling, and buses.
And if I may just add on this, I think one of the important elements of that exercise is to get the normal users of private cars who came in or comes in normally in the Sandton area to make it attractive for them to consider indeed the alternatives. So it is very much for a longer period of time, and therefore longer than just one day or a weekend, during the entire month, to actually provide an opportunity to really consider of in the future to change the patterns of mobility and transportation from an individual perspective as well. So obviously it will raise questions, it will raise also comments, but it will also have an educational effect and at least an opportunity for people to make some choices after 1 month. And I think these discussions will be very interesting to be followed throughout the festival, and I am sure and know that the mayor and the staff administration of Johannesburg will actually very prominently interact with the citizens and the residents of that particular area on those questions, so as to actually come to a viable alternative at a long term in the future, and possibly also spread it out towards other areas in Johannesburg. Is there another question? All right. So our expectations with regard to the climate summit, obviously, as I said before, transportation and the building sector are, from an urban perspective, the most important sectors contributing and causing greenhouse gas emissions. So our task is really to incentivize and to encourage urban areas, cities, large and smaller ones, developing cities, developed cities, new cities, to engage in strategies that are concerned with good mobility whilst reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and with buildings that would produce energy rather than contribute to greenhouse gas emissions. So departing from that perspective, what we will wish to see in the summit is that nations would support cities and their actions that they undertake at the urban level in these sectors. So we would like to bring to Paris, at the one hand, a variety of projects that are yet to be implemented, that maybe also are in need of funding, and it addresses in particularly these areas, and that we can have a discussion with the nations as well on potentially funding, but also in particularly how these projects in the future can actually contribute to the implementation of the regime that nations will agree upon. That's one part of it. And within that, the eco-mobility and the EcoMobility Festival and eco-mobility strategies all in all and throughout the world are of course an important dimension. We will have special sessions at the COP21 that will highlight these strategies, and of course we'll take the Johannesburg experience in the first place. We will present it to a large audience that is in the COP, including the nations, obviously, and in the hope that we can also get encouragement from nations here to further support these kind of actions, these kind of innovative actions that are being undertaken on the ground.
Thank you very much. Just to complement what Gino was saying, the first is that there was an earlier question about are the ICLEI events around the festival. We have eco-mobility dialogues that would, and events, different events taking place. Some of them initiated jointly with ICLEI, some of them with the local private sector that have bought into the project and have committed to ensure that we promote eco-mobile solutions. And some of the solutions business are thinking about are actually quite creative. Some people are saying, well, we do need access to cars, but can we have, for example, platforms related to reducing the number of parking bays for the month for our employees so that we encourage ride sharing for our employees. And we think that these are innovations that business itself is thinking about. And there are other innovations that different people are bringing to the table, ranging from Uber trying to present solutions with regards to having a large number of people using Uber as a facility, to local taxi industries providing solutions. So for us, we're really saying it is a festival, it is a period in which we are all in it together to be able to look at the alternatives. I should say that from the point of view of the people of Johannesburg, in response to the last question, the general response has been quite positive, in certain instances a bit ambivalent, because people are not sure what to expect, but more and more people seem to be buying in as we continue to communicate with people and indicate what the alternatives would be. So we certainly do think that as we continue escalating our communication and marketing, more and more people would be less ambivalent as they realize that the alternatives would be there for them to be able to access not only Sandton, but to be able to move around the city with greater ease. Well, thank you very much with regards to the question of advice to other mayors. I think I should say that we're also seeing it as an opportunity, because the city is interestingly hosting from the 29th of November the Afri-Cities Conference, where all of the top African local government leaders would be in Johannesburg. And climate change and our preparations towards COP21 is certainly going to be an important part of what we'll be discussing at the Afri-Cities Conference. We want to take these lessons and say, how do we then transplant it to other cities? The most important point for us is that this can't succeed if it is only done by a municipality. You need to be able to mobilize the business sector, civil society, and different organizations that come to the party, so that it is a partnership between the city and its citizens in ensuring the success of the project. The project itself has been agreed to by national government. In fact, on the 4th, we would be having an eco-mobility walk with the Minister being here. The Premier has committed his attendance, the Premier of Gauteng. And we are looking forward to other ministers, and we've written to the Presidency to see how many people from the Presidency and other Cabinet Ministers would be able to participate. Because I think there's a general realization that we have to find solutions to the issues that we deal with. And those solutions are not always going to be found in building new infrastructure. Some of the solutions have to be found in looking at alternatives that work from an economic and environmental point of view. Well, thank you very much. I think that question is linked to the previous question. We will be sharing our experiences and the benefits of the festival with our colleagues at the Afro-Cities conference that's taking place at the end of this year.
With regard to the question of the next festival, indeed, we are, of course, in touch with a number of cities already. We have actually launched now a sort of a bidding process for cities to apply to engage with us in next festivals. We are, and this is for the year 2017, 18 and beyond. We are looking currently already on opportunities for hosting such a festival on the island of Taiwan in the city of Kaohsiung. We do hope that the leadership in the city of Kaohsiung on the island of Taiwan will be in a position to actually confirm their willingness of hosting it at the EcoMobility Festival in Johannesburg, and that the mayoral delegation will be attending the EcoMobility Festival in Johannesburg. And then we are looking towards other regions surely for the years to come, namely 2018 and beyond. So it is our intention to spread and share these experiences and experiments with as many cities as possible, to actually as a good example to go forward and to engage with as many cities on these issues. And of course we have the intention to, in the next years, to have each time again, once a year, a festival like this organized in a city in any of our regions. Oh, it is absolutely possible that the festival would come back to Africa. As I said, we have had the first EcoMobility Festival in the city of Suwon in South Korea, which is in Asia. If now there will be an EcoMobility Festival in the city of Kaohsiung on the island of Taiwan, obviously we are back in Asia as well. So there is no limit of having not a other EcoMobility Festival on the continent of Africa. We would be very much looking forward to bring it as much as possible back to Africa, as well as to the other regions, obviously.
Thank you very much.
Members of the press, Mayor Park Tau, thank you very much for this online press conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Kude.